Hello, and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Friday, the 17th of June. I'm Andrew Wilson, and this is Scotland at 7. This evening, I have the latest daily update from Ukraine on day 114 of the illegal Russian war of aggression, and then I will take a look at today's headlines from Scotland and around the world. The EU's executive arm has recommended that Ukraine and its neighbour Moldova be designated candidates for membership of the bloc. The announcement by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, came only a day after the EU's most powerful leaders visited Kyiv in a show of support. Ukraine's President, Volodymyr Zelensky, tweeted that the move marks the first steps on the EU membership path that'll certainly bring our victory closer. He said he was grateful to European Commission President von der Leyen for the historic decision, adding that he expects a positive result from the Commission next week. Vladimir Putin described Western sanctions against Russia as reckless and insane, and of trying to crush the Russian economy in one go by force. The European Union has completely lost sovereignty, he said, and is dancing to someone else's tunes. He accused the EU of taking everything that is dictated to them and dealing harm to its population, business, and economy. The Russian president was addressing the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. He was almost 2 hours behind schedule after a denial of service cyber attack. It is now impossible and physically dangerous for civilians to leave the Azot chemical plant in Severodonetsk due to constant shelling and fighting. That's according to Luhansk Governor Serhiy Haidai. He said there are 568 people in the shelter, including 38 children. Exiting the plant is possible only with a complete ceasefire. A pro-Russian separatist leader claimed Russian-backed forces would reopen a humanitarian corridor for civilians to leave the plant, the Interfax news agency reported. France 24 reports that Ukrainians are skeptical of the idea, given their experience of the battle for Mariupol. Ukraine's navy has claimed it has struck the Russian rescue tug, the Spasastil Vasily Bek, which it says was in the process of the transportation of ammunition, weapons, and personnel of the Black Sea Fleet to Snake Island. Ukraine's Armed Forces Strategic Communications Directorate said the tugboat was hit with 2 Harpoon missiles. If so, that will mark the first time that Ukraine has said it had hit a Russian vessel with this type of Western-supplied anti-ship rocket. At least 2 people have been killed and 20 injured in a Russian missile attack on Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine, according to its governor, Vitaly Kim. The head of the UK's armed forces has said Russia has already strategically lost the war in Ukraine and is now a more diminished power. Admiral Sir Tony Radatkin said that Russia was suffering heavy losses, running out of troops and advanced missiles, and would never be able to take over all of Ukraine. France's President Emmanuel Macron has said that he thinks it is unlikely a deal can be done with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, about exporting grain from Ukraine's Odessa port. A third American volunteer fighting in Ukraine has been reported as missing amid concerns that all 3 may have been captured by Russian or pro-Russian forces. And the 2023 Eurovision Song Contest cannot be held in Ukraine given the ongoing war, the European Broadcasting Union has said. Organisers are now in talks with the BBC to perhaps host the event in the UK instead. The European Union gave its blessing for Ukraine and its neighbour Moldova to become candidates to join the bloc in the most dramatic geopolitical shift to result from Russia's invasion. Ukrainians are ready to die for the perspective, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told a news conference, wearing Ukrainian colours, a yellow blazer over a blue blouse. We want them to live with us, the European dream. It was only the start of a process that could take many years, but it puts Kyiv on a course to realise a goal that would have been far beyond its reach just months ago. Ukraine applied to join the EU just 4 days after Russian troops poured across its border in February. 4 days later, so did Moldova and Georgia, smaller ex-Soviet states also contending with Russian-occupied regions. It's the first step on the EU membership path that'll certainly bring our victory closer, tweeted President Volodymyr Zelensky, thanking von der Leyen and EU members for the decision. When President Vladimir Putin ordered his special military operation to disarm and denazify Ukraine, one of his main objectives was to halt the expansion of Western institutions, which he called a threat to Russia. But the war, which has killed thousands of people, destroyed whole cities, and set millions to flight, has had the opposite effect. Finland and Sweden have applied to join the NATO military alliance, and the EU has now opened its arms to the east. Leaders of EU countries are expected to endorse the decision at a summit next week. The leaders of the three biggest, Germany, France, and Italy, had signalled their solidarity on Thursday by visiting Kyiv, along with the President of Romania. Ukraine belongs to the European family, Germany's Olaf Scholz said after meeting Zelensky. And Moldova's President, Maya Sandu, hailed a strong signal of support for Moldova and our citizens, and said her government was committed to working hard to enact the necessary reforms. Joining the EU can require years of administrative reform. There are 35 chapters of the Acquis setting out the standards to meet in areas from judicial policy and financial services to food safety. Nor is membership guaranteed. Talks have been stalled for years with Turkey, a candidate since 1999. But the ambition to extend the EU deep into the heart of the former Soviet Union amounts to a shift on par with the decision in the 1990s to welcome the ex-communist countries of Eastern Europe. The chances of the UK heading into a recession over the next year or two have increased amid soaring inflation due to the country's vulnerability to external shocks, JP Morgan economists said today after the Bank of England raised borrowing costs. The Bank of England raised its benchmark interest rate to 1.25% yesterday. That's the highest since January 2009. While its move was more gradual than some other central banks, the Bank of England said it was ready to act forcefully if needed to tackle dangers from inflation. If the US Federal Reserve engineers a sharp growth slowdown or recession, this would spill over to the UK and, combined with a tightening in domestic financial conditions, likely produce a UK recession, JP Morgan said. The Fed on Thursday rolled out its biggest rate hike since 1994 and flagged a slowing economy. Given the nature of the UK economy, we see high vulnerability to external shocks beyond the near term and see increasing chances of a recession over the next 1 to 2 years, JPM said. It said recession would be more likely if UK interest rates topped its long-term forecast of 3%. Countries worldwide are battling cost of living levels not seen in decades, ratcheted up by the reopening of the global economy after the COVID-19 pandemic and then by the Russia-Ukraine war. The Bank of England expects inflation to top 11% in October. Earlier in June, the UK government said it would launch a comprehensive review of the mortgage market, months after a Bank of England survey showed that lenders expect loan defaults to rise. And the Bank of England will raise interest rates more aggressively to tackle soaring living costs if there are signs of inflation becoming persistently higher for longer than expected, its chief economist has warned. Hugh Pill said the Bank of England was on high alert to take forceful action if there were signs of a wage price spiral taking hold or if companies continued to raise their prices. The central bank raised interest rates by 0.25 percentage points on Thursday to 1.25%, while warning that inflation was expected to peak above 11% later this year, as surging household energy bills and the rising cost of a weekly shop hit families across the UK. In comments signalling that the bank is willing to go further with a 0.5% rise in future, Mr. Pill told Bloomberg TV, "If we see greater evidence that the current high level of inflation is becoming embedded in pricing behaviour by firms, in wage setting behaviour by firms and workers, then that will be the trigger for this more aggressive action." Mr. Pill insisted that the central bank had not acted too late to curb the highest rates of inflation for 4 decades, despite raising its forecast for consumer price inflation for the fifth successive time on Thursday. A member of the bank's Monetary Policy Committee, he voted in the majority for a 0.25% interest rate rise on Thursday, while three of his colleagues, who are external members of the MPC, backed a larger half-point increase in a 6-3 split. The US Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 0.75 percentage points on Wednesday, the biggest single increase since 1994, amid growing concerns over the strength of inflation in the world's biggest economy. "We started earlier than some other central banks. Cumulatively, since we started in December, we've done as much as other central banks have done more quickly in recent times," Pill said. The bank is facing heavy criticism from cabinet ministers as Boris Johnson's government struggles in the polls at a time when UK households are suffering the biggest annual fall in living standards since the 1950s. Tesco has said customers are putting fewer items in their baskets and are switching to cheaper own-brand alternatives as they face unprecedented increases in the cost of living. The UK's largest supermarket said it had gained market share from the other Big Four chains, that's Asda, Morrisons and Sainsbury's, but sales in the 3 months to the 28th of May this year fell 1.5% on the same period last year, when of course the UK was in lockdown. Ken Murphy, the chief executive of Tesco, said the market environment remains incredibly challenging. He said it was difficult to separate the significant impact of last year's coronavirus lockdowns from other influences on shoppers, but Tesco was seeing some early indications of changing customer behaviour as a result of the inflationary environment. Shoppers spent more than 14% less online and nearly 1% less in Tesco's big supermarkets, but more than 6% more in its convenience stores, indicating that families are trying to buy little and often to try and keep a lid on their grocery bills. Tesco said the biggest falls in sales was in clothing and general merchandise, such as homewares and toys, while the decline in the volume of goods sold was partly offset by inflation. Amid soaring petrol prices, fuel sales remained down on pre-pandemic levels. Mr. Murphy said there were signs that shoppers were starting to shift their spend towards its cut price ranges, particularly on basics, such as bread, beans and pasta, where inflation has been high, in order to save money. Shop prices rose in May to the fastest rate in more than a decade, according to figures from the British Retail Consortium and Nielsen IQ. Food inflation leapt by 4.3% in May from 3.5% in April, and that's the highest since April 2012. On Thursday, the Bank of England warned the headline rate of annual consumer inflation was likely to rise above 11% in October, and of course inflation is already running at a 40-year high of 9%. Priti Patel has approved the extradition of the WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange to the US, a decision the organisation immediately said it would appeal against in the High Court. The case passed to the Home Secretary last month after the Supreme Court ruled there were no legal questions over assurances given by US authorities over how Assange was likely to be treated. WikiLeaks immediately released a statement to say it would appeal against the decision, Today is not the end of the fight, it said. It is only the beginning of a new legal battle. We will appeal through the legal system. The next appeal will be before the High Court. The statement said that anyone who cared about freedom of expression should be deeply ashamed that the Home Secretary approved Assange's extradition. Julian did nothing wrong. He has committed no crime and is not a criminal. He is a journalist and a publisher, and he is being punished for doing his job, it said. It was in Priti Patel's power to do the right thing. Instead, she will forever be remembered as an accomplice of the United States in its agenda to turn investigative journalism into a criminal enterprise. Any appeal is likely to focus on grounds such as the right to freedom of expression and whether the extradition request is politically motivated. Patel had been considering whether the US extradition request met the remaining legal tests, including their promise not to execute him. At a press conference in London, Assange's wife Stella said, "We are not at the end of the road here. We are going to fight this. We are going to use every available avenue. I'm going to use every waking hour fighting for Julian until he is free, until justice is served." The saga was triggered in 2010 when WikiLeaks published a series of leaks by Chelsea Manning, a former US Army soldier, as well as a dump of more than 250,000 US diplomatic cables, containing classified diplomatic analysis from world leaders. The US government launched a criminal investigation into those leaks. In the same year, an arrest warrant for Assange was issued but for two separate sexual assault allegations in Sweden. Following a hearing in which the UK ruled he should be extradited to Sweden in 2012, Mr. Assange sought asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. He claimed if he was extradited to Sweden, he would then be extradited to the US. Mr. Assange finally left the embassy in 2019 and was arrested for breaking his bail conditions and subsequently jailed. Extradition proceedings to the US were started against him following that conviction. Patel's decision was met with immediate criticism from campaigners, journalists, and MPs. Caroline Lucas, the Green Party MP for Brighton Pavilion, said, "Absolutely shameful that Priti Patel has approved Julian Assange's extradition to US. This sets a dangerous precedent for press freedom and democracy." The former Cabinet Minister David Davis said, "Sadly, I do not believe Mr. Assange will get a fair trial. This extradition treaty needs to be rewritten to give British and American citizens identical rights, unlike now." And the veteran BBC broadcaster, John Simpson, said, "Journalists in Britain and elsewhere will be very worried by the decision to extradite Julian Assange to the US, both for his own well-being and for the precedent it creates for journalism worldwide." The lead Republican negotiator in US Senate efforts to craft a bipartisan gun safety bill walked out of the talks on Thursday, while the lead Democrat remained optimistic that lawmakers could vote on legislation before leaving for a 2-week July 4th recess. Following hours of negotiations that included Democratic Senators Chris Murphy and Kristen Sinema and Republican Senators John Cornyn and Thom Tillis, Senator Cornyn said, "I don't know what they have in mind, but I'm through talking," after he walked out. However, Tillis and Murphy later said the talks were close to reaching agreement and added that legislative text for a bill could emerge in coming days. The bipartisan group had been working on a deal to curb gun violence since a gunman killed 19 schoolchildren and 2 adults in Uvalde, Texas, and that was less than 2 weeks after a racist shooting in Buffalo, New York, left 10 dead. Talks have become bogged down in recent days. To land a deal like this is difficult. It comes with a lot of emotions. It comes with political risk to both sides. But we're close enough that we should be able to get there, said Murphy, the lead Democratic negotiator. Murphy later issued a statement saying, "I believe we can bring this to a vote next week." Time to pass major legislation is running short as the November 8 midterm elections, when Republicans are looking to win back control of Congress, draw nearer. Murphy and Tillis each told reporters that staff have begun drafting the legislative text for the majority of provisions that lawmakers have agreed on. Tillis suggested that text could be available as early as Friday. Tillis said he expected a deal, but declined to speak in detail about the negotiations. We are too close and down to the final stages, he said. This group announced a framework of measures to curb gun violence on Sunday. It did not go as far as Democrats, including President Joe Biden, had sought, but would still be the most significant action to combat gun violence to emerge from Congress in years, if passed. Disagreements remained over the two main provisions: how to provide incentives to states to create red flag laws in which guns can temporarily be taken away from people who are deemed dangerous, and the boyfriend loophole, which allows authorities to block abusive spouses from buying firearms but does not cover intimate partners who are not married. Cornyn, whose home state of Texas does not have a red flag law and is seen as unlikely to enact one, wants the funding for that provision to cover other efforts for people with mental illness, such as crisis intervention programs. Tillis said that the negotiators were working out a mechanism that would allow federal funding for states that want to adopt red flag laws and also states that favour other intervention programs, with parity the ultimate goal. He also said the lawmakers were looking to existing state laws as models for the boyfriend loophole provision. Almost 9 out of 10 head teachers in Scotland say improvements have been made in closing the poverty-related attainment gap despite the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The 2021 Head Teacher Survey, published today, also finds that 94% expect to see improvements over the next few years as a result of Attainment Scotland Fund supported approaches. An evaluation report on Year 6 in 2020-21 of the Attainment Scotland Fund, also published today, indicates there have been positive changes towards closing the poverty-related attainment gap despite the challenges presented by the pandemic. Challenges included staff and pupils, absence, and the ability to deliver some initiatives. The Education Secretary, Shirley-Ann Somerville, said, "It's encouraging that our head teachers are continuing to report progress towards tackling the poverty-related attainment gap, despite the impact of the pandemic. We know the disruption caused by COVID-19 has presented serious challenges for learning and teaching in Scotland, as it has around the world. But the responses of schools and local authorities in adapting to this, supported by Attainment Scotland funding, has been a testament to the resilience of Scottish education." Progress was being made in tackling the poverty-related attainment gap before the pandemic, and we now need to increase the speed and the scale of this, she continued. Councillor Shona Morrison, who represents Fochabers and Lanbride on Moray Council, has been elected as the 16th President of COSLA, following a meeting of the full convention in Edinburgh this morning. Councillor Stephen Heddle from Orkney Islands Council was appointed Vice President at the same meeting. Commenting following the meeting, Councillor Morrison said, "I am honoured to be elected President of COSLA and excited to take on this opportunity in one of the top political jobs in Scotland. I look forward to continuing the progress which has already been made on a cross-party basis over the last 5-year term. I am clear about the pressures faced by local government and the challenges and opportunities ahead. This is an important job and a challenge I will relish and give my all to. I am a politician and a member of a political party. However, my focus in this role will be on team local government." Working with the Vice President and the spokespeople at COSLA, I'm confident that we will deliver on our key priorities as we work together to be the voice for local councils and to champion the essential services they continue to provide under increasingly challenging circumstances. She continued, I would like to congratulate Councillor Heddle on their election as Vice President and also pay tribute to the sterling work done by my predecessor, Councillor Alison Everson, and Vice President, Councillor Graham Houston. The first medical students to graduate at the University of St Andrews in over 50 years received their degrees today in the Younger Hall as part of a bumper 3 weeks of graduation celebrations. A total of 44 students from ScotGem, Scotland's first graduate entry medical programme that's designed to develop doctors interested in a career as generalist practitioners within NHS Scotland, crossed the stage to graduate at the Younger Hall in St Andrews, the first from the School of Medicine to do so since 1972. The ScotGem programme, run jointly with the University of Dundee and supported by the University of the Highlands and Islands, is designed to develop doctors interested in a career as a general practitioner within NHS Scotland. ScotGem offers a unique and innovative 4-year graduate entry medical programme tailored to meet the contemporary and future needs of our NHS in Scotland. Taught through a partnership between the Universities of St Andrews and Dundee in collaboration with NHS Fife, NHS Tayside, NHS Highland, NHS Dumfries and Galloway, and the University of the Highlands and Islands, ScotGem focuses on remote and rural medicine, healthcare improvement, and the development of generalists in medicine. Scotland's Chief Medical Officer, Professor Sir Gregor Smith, who attended the ceremony, said, It was a privilege to see the first ScotGem graduations today. The joy and pride on the faces of graduates, their supporters, and course organisers was a sight to behold. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you to the wide partnership led by the University of St Andrews and University of Dundee who made it possible. And Professor David Crossman, the Dean of Medicine at the University of St Andrews, said, At its inception we all wanted ScotGem to be disruptive in the landscape of Scotland's medical education. It has proven to do that whilst also being highly effective at training doctors. The way that students have been taught and the way that they have learnt through innovative aspects of teaching delivery and curriculum design have been revolutionary. And the 2023 Eurovision Song Contest should be held at the Hydro in Glasgow, Scottish Greens MSP Ross Greer said today. Mr Greer made the call after the European Broadcast Union announced that it would be unable to host the event in Ukraine due to the ongoing Russian war, and that it would instead engage with the BBC in discussions about hosting the event in the UK. Commenting, Ross Greer MSP said, It's hard to think of a city more suited to Eurovision than Glasgow. Whether it's COP26, the Commonwealth Games, or the European Athletics Championships, the city's ability to host major events and put on a great welcome has been proven beyond a doubt. Add to that our brilliant local music scene and the fact that Eurovision fans are already familiar with the Hydro from its hosting of the fictional grand final in last year's Netflix Eurovision movie, and it's clear that Glasgow ticks all the boxes. These obviously aren't the circumstances anyone would have wished for, he continued, and it is desperately sad that Ukraine is unable to host the event itself. So let's bring Eurovision to Glasgow and do our Ukrainian friends proud by putting on a great competition and paying tribute to the inspiring resilience and perseverance of the Ukrainian people. And that was our final item this evening. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs and culture. Please help us to continue to make these programmes, to continue to develop the station, and to make new programmes for you. If you would like to support us, then please subscribe or donate to Broadcasting Scotland. You will find the link to do that on the screen now. You will have seen our appeals for assistance on Facebook and Twitter because the urgent need for financial support has not gone away and our crowdfunder is still open. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work and promotes the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. You can also find us on Twitter at BroadcastScot and on Facebook by searching for Broadcasting Scotland. Meantime, I will be here again on Sunday with the next edition of the Full Scottish, so please tune in and join me on Sunday at 12 noon. And so that's the way it is at very nearly Scotland at 7:30. Thank you to everyone who has been watching this evening. I hope that you have a very peaceful weekend and can join us again here on Broadcasting Scotland. Bye bye.